I'm Kyle Artelle. I'm an assistant professor at a college called the State University of New York College of Environmental Science and Forestry, or SUNY ESF. I work here with the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment and the Biology Department. And a lot of my work takes place on the west coast of what's now called Canada, and especially in maq territory, so an Indigenous community there. Yeah, so there is an invasive species on the west coast of Canada and the States, and a lot of the world called European green crab. And it's this really damaging species. It kind of eats everything. So it harms a lot of native wildlife. It'll dig up seagrass meadows, for example, which are really important habitats. And so the maq Nation, Indigenous community there, is working to manage this invasion. So they have these traps that they use to monitor, to see how many crabs there are, to see if the population is increasing or decreasing. And they also use the traps to try to reduce that population, to try to reduce the pressure on the ecosystem. So the nation had these traps out to catch these European green crabs, and they started to get damaged a couple of years ago. And the damage looked like it could be bear or wolf. There's teeth marks. If you have a dog and you've seen when they chew on a stick, it kind of looked like that, the damage. And some of these traps, European green crabs live intertidally. So they live in that band of the beach between where the highest tide mark is, where the water gets the highest, and the low tide mark. So the traps are generally in the intertidal. And so in a low tide, some of these traps are exposed. They're just sitting on the beach and you can walk right up to them. And so for a bear or a wolf, those traps, it's very easy to walk up to. You just walk up to them. But some of the traps were set in deeper water that is never exposed on a low tide. So these traps are never accessible by just walking up to them. And some of those traps were getting damaged too. So the assumption was, well, it can't be a bear or a wolf because they don't dive. So it must be a marine mammal, was the assumption, that is accessing these traps. Something must be swimming down to get to these deeper traps. What could it be? So we were in the field doing field work in 2024, and we happen to have these cameras that are part of this Wolf and Biodiversity Project. So we are studying wolves in the area, but we had these camera traps available, these remote cameras, and we said, why don't we just set one up while we're there? We'll point it at one of the traps, and maybe we'll get a hint. Maybe we'll get some suggestion. And we were expecting that maybe we'd see a seal swim by, and then we'd go, oh, maybe it's a seal. Maybe we'd see a mink or an otter. We didn't know, but really we didn't have high expectations. We thought we would see something in the water and it might suggest to us who might be damaging the traps. But at the time we thought, oh, it's probably mink, river otter, maybe it's seal. We were kind of looking for evidence of a marine mammal. We were not looking for bears or wolves. What we found, and really interestingly, we set this camera up, and it was the next day that we actually got this video, and we haven't seen it since. So it was really incredible luck. We haven't seen it fully on camera since, but the video starts off with this wolf. She's swimming to shore, and she has a buoy in her mouth, a float. These are what are used so that you can tell where a crab trap is when it's underwater. So she's swimming to shore with this buoy. She then walks up the beach and drops the buoy down. And that then brings the line to the beach as well. There's this line that's attached both to the trap and to the float. So she brings a buoy to the beach, puts it down. She then grabs the line from the beach and starts pulling on it, and pulling further and further up the beach, this line. You then start to see the crab trap come out of the water. And then when the crab trap is in shallow enough water, she goes and picks it up with her mouth. And then she opens up there's a cup within that holds the bait. So she opens up that bait cup and she eats the bait, which was herring within it. So you see this whole sequence. It starts off, all you see is a float in the water, nothing else. And she can't see anything else except the float. But this all is very suggestive that she understands that attached to the float is a line, attached to the line is the trap, which is on the bottom of the ocean. And in that trap is a bait cup that has food that she can get if she accesses it. And she knows exactly the steps required to bring that buoy to shore, which will give her a good angle on the line. If she keeps pulling on the line, the crab trap will come out, and then she could get the bait within. Depending on the definition of tool use, people have different definitions of what qualifies for tool use in animals. One definition is that using a tool is just using an object external to yourself to achieve a goal. And a lot of our human tools are that, right? A hammer is something you just pick up and bang. And it's a tool external to yourself to achieve a goal. A computer is a very complicated version of that, something external to ourselves to use a goal, to achieve a goal. Some definitions of tool use, though, suggest that if we are to decide that another species can use tools, they have to be able to create those tools. So an example, if an animal is using a string to achieve a goal, they have to tie the string on. They can't simply pull the string on an object that's already been attached. So it kind of depends on the definition that you're using. In this particular case, the wolf did not tie the string, of course, but she did use the tool. She used the crab trap. She pulled on the line to get the crab trap out. She pulled the crab trap exactly as a human would pull the crab trap. Whether you want to call this tool use or not, what it really is a very sophisticated behavior and requires the series of steps that she had to do in order to achieve that goal, right? First, she had to bring the buoy to shore, and she had to bring it up the shore to access the rope. Then she could pull on the rope. Then she could access the crab trap. It's this real multi-step process that she had to do. And remarkably, again, it would be one thing if she was pulling a crab trap across the beach where she could see the trap and she was pulling it. But in this case, the trap was not visible, which suggests that she had to have this understanding in her mind that a float almost represents a crab trap, that a float is attached to a line, is attached to a trap. She couldn't see all these things. All she could see was the float. But certainly the way that she did this, she did it so efficiently. She did it with intent. She wasn't just playing around. She was very much, every step she did very efficiently achieved a step in that progress I just described. So very sophisticated behavior. And by some people's definition of tool use, absolutely it's tool use. By some other definitions, where tool use in animal requires, in non-human animals requires constructing the tool, she did not construct the tool, but she used it, and she used it in exactly the way that we do. Initially, a love for these species. I think I've been fascinated by species like bears and wolves for a long time. And as I've gotten to know them over the years, it just made me want to spend more and more time learning about them and having an opportunity for them to teach us. So I, my students, the nation that we collaborate with, takes this approach of sort of having an open mind and a curiosity as to what they might teach us, what these species might teach us. We don't see ourselves as experts in any of this, but as students in this. So yeah, just this sort of real curiosity and love for these species sort of got me into the work. And then through this work, my most of my time doing research on bears and wolves and other species has been in haked out territory, has been with coastal communities. And so it's also evolved into really wanting to do work that can support the nations and the community's stewardship of their own, of their territories. So our work sort of is not just centered in this curiosity and this love of the species, but also this real appreciation and respect for the communities and wanting to support the work that they want to have happen.